Welcome to all of our virtual participants, specifically to the North Carolina Utilities Commission and our other regulatory colleagues who are with us this morning. We're at the part of our program where we present to the North Carolina Utilities Commission the results and the good work being done by AEC, and Bob Goodson is going to do that in just a minute. Before I turn it over to Bob, I want to introduce the members of the Board of Directors who are with us either in person or virtually this morning. Kendall Bowman, Dion Delegati, Chris Edge, Hayes Finley, Adam Foodman, Dr. Robert Koger, Catherine Collins, Dale Lambert, Peter Ledford, Gayleen Watson, and Carl Wilkins. Robert Powell, Bob Powell, is not with us this morning. And our legal counsel was here for the meeting this morning, John Fusco, but he is gone. Before I turn it over to Bob, which I will do imminently, I want to take an off-script moment to thank not only the members of the AEC staff, enormous thanks due there, and Bob does such a good job of thanking and appreciating them and lifting them up to all of us. But I want to thank Bob for the extraordinary job he's done, the resilience he's shown, and the leadership that he has exhibited in not just getting along with the AEC and the work it's been doing, but of doing a really, really fine job, very inspiring job. And so I think we thank you, but I want to make sure we do it in front of witnesses. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bob.
Thank you, Joanne, and thanks to the commissioners for having this report day. We have some really good speakers today that I think will encapsulate a lot of what has gone on in advanced energy. And I'm really excited that our first speaker, Tom Hines, who is a principal with Tierra Resources, has led the effort, very passionately led the effort to look at the impact advanced energy's had since its inception in 1980. And it's been a daunting task that Tierra has had to pull out to look back and try to evaluate over 40 years the kind of impact and to come up with certainly a metric that helps us look at where we've been, what impact we've had in the energy industry, particularly in North Carolina. And then looking at that will be the groundwork that we'll do looking at the next 40 years. So we want to thank Tom for being our first speaker. After Tom, we'll do our annual NC Green Power report, and Vicki McCann, who is Vice President of NC Green Power and our Program Director, will provide that report on our subsidiary. And then finally, each year we try to look at a key member of our staff that has been involved in an area that has really been a key leader for the year. And I'm proud to have Michael Lyda, who is our supervisor of our commercial industrial group and leads our motors lab. Michael's going to give a report on exactly what all we have been doing. We mentioned in our earlier board meeting, and I think it's worthy to note that Mike has been this year named the Engineer of the Year Award with the Association of Energy Engineers, AEE. And we're so proud of the work that Mike has done, and we wanted to feature his area this year. So without any other introductions, I'll go ahead and turn over the meeting. We have Tom Hines coming in to talk about the impact. Tom is in Phoenix, Arizona, and so we appreciate Tom tying in. Tom?
Okay, thank you, Bob. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, thank you. Yes, my name is Tom Hines. Really happy to be here with everyone this morning. I'm a principal with Tierra Resource Consultants. We're a clean energy evaluation consulting firm, and as Bob said, I'm based in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm here today to do a report out of a project that we've worked on for the past several months with advanced energy. And as Bob said, what we've done is try to take a look back at the 40-year history of advanced energy, document some of the actions and most importantly, quantify some of their influence and impacts that's been really substantial in your area as well as nationally. And so I've got a lot to cover. I'm just going to dive right in. If we go to the next slide, quick introduction. I'll talk about project objectives and a bit about Advanced Energy's unique collaborative approach to how they create impacts. And I'll come back to that throughout the presentation. Then in my second section of the presentation, I want to overview the project that we did, our research framework, how we gathered insights and estimated impacts. And then in the third section of the presentation, I'll focus on those areas of impact. We looked at 5 different sectors, and then I will report out on what we found in each one of those sectors, the actions, and most importantly, the collective impacts that Advanced Energy has been able to generate over their 40-year history. Next slide. So quickly, our project objectives were pretty simple. It started with a third-party effort to document Advanced Energy's 40-year history in collaboration with the Advanced Energy team. I've worked with that team for years, and so this was really, again, a third-party effort to help document that from a third-party perspective, and most importantly, to use Tierra's evaluation experience evaluating programs and savings to quantify estimated impacts that Advanced Energy's actions have had over the last 40 years, and then to use that to develop a final impact report, executive summary, and the presentation that you guys see today. So next slide. Again, before I dig into the research project, I thought it would be really important to create a bit of a foundation for what we saw in our research for the unique way that Advanced Energy, as we call it, turns bold ideas into big impacts over time. And what you see here is what we call our impact curve, and it is impacts over time. And we see this repeated in the 5 different sectors that Advanced Energy has focused on that we researched. And what this starts with often is a bold idea that works in collaboration with industry leaders to say, what is an opportunity or what is a challenge or problem we're facing in energy and energy efficiency? And Advanced Energy is able to take quick action to really kind of establish how we can intervene in that sector to create efficiencies and benefits for North Carolina consumers. And so that often starts with some of the investigative research to try to document what are the problems and challenges, what are the opportunities and techniques that we can use to solve these problems. A lot of times that evolves into testing and evaluation. And the difference there is that this is where we can start to develop codes and standards and ways that consumers can identify an energy efficient product or service from one that is not. The next logical step on that curve is that Advanced Energy works with service providers and trade allies to make sure that they train them on the ways to deliver that efficiency. And then side by side with that, they work with customers, both residential and business customers, to make sure they're educated about the next best actions that they can take to improve efficiency. Finally, at the top of this impact curve, what you see is Advanced Energy becoming a subject matter expert that can help with government programs, with utility programs that help to really scale these kind of efforts, but are grounded in the great research and science that Advanced Energy does to make sure that we get it right. Next slide. One thing that is incredibly important to this process, and that we were particularly impressed with as an outside party looking at what Advanced Energy has been able to do, is this amazing list of collaborators that they've developed over the last 40 years that includes everything from government to utilities to trades and all kinds of nonprofits. And so what Advanced Energy has been able to do is become kind of a glue for how we collaborate across all these organizations to move the ball forward. And one of the things that is great about that is that it has a tendency to really advance and accelerate market transformation. For our purposes, in terms of our project, it does make it more difficult to determine how do we take the known efficiency advances and try to, attribute those advances to Advanced Energy versus all these other great partners. And so that's by its very nature made our job a little bit more difficult in terms of researching this over the last 40 years. So let's go to the next slide. And I want to talk a little bit about our research approach and how did we take this look back over 40 years and come up with a magnitude scale of impact. So on the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about our project overview. And it really started with us digging into a lot of research with the Advanced Energy team to review their own historical documentation, third-party data that had been collected that helped us define the specific actions that Advanced Energy took through the years, those milestones, and how things evolved over that time. The next step, we determined that it was really important to develop a bit of a framework that we could use to concisely summarize all these activities over such a long period of time and do it in a way that was consistent across all the 5 subject areas that we looked at. The next phase was probably, I think, the most important phase of the project, and that was identifying and working with a group of 50+ subject matter experts who were in the room at the time that these things were being developed and who have a perspective on Advanced Energy's actions and influence during all of these market transformation efforts. And then finally, we took that and created a formula to develop ultimately metrics and quantified impacts that we could produce in terms of energy savings, dollar savings, carbon benefits, and other benefits for the state of North Carolina. Next slide. And so the research framework that I just mentioned, we wanted to make sure that we were using this same framework across all 5 sectors. And really, we started with what was that bold idea that was really the genesis for Advanced Energy's involvement in a particular sector. We really researched into the approach. What was it that Advanced Energy did, and what do they continue to do in this area? How has it evolved? And then the history, what is the context behind the approach? And with that, I think very importantly, who were the key people that were also working in this area, that were both involved directly with Advanced Energy and indirectly within the industry to move the ball forward, and how do we correctly attribute all that influence. We wanted to document timeline and some key milestones along each one of these very long market interventions, and then finally create an impact matrix from all of these various actions. Next slide, I'll dig in a little bit deeper to how we did that. And by the way, I want to just throw a quick plug out there that we do have a full report of this study that I think is being submitted to the commission today. But we wanted to first give you a chance to see this in the presentation. We also have an executive summary. So a lot more detail on the framework and the ways that we came about developing these metrics. But what we started with was those impact curve actions that I just mentioned a few slides ago. But what we did is we took those actions and we broke them down further into particular market transformation activities. And those were in kind of 3 buckets. First, industry standards, codes, their industry's own labeling standards, things like that, testing facilities, and those kind of standards. Workforce development being all the training and all the ways that Advanced Energy helps make sure that the workforce can deliver and these energy efficiency products and services. And then finally, what are those program designs and programs developed and the program partners that Advanced Energy worked with as these things scaled? That let us ultimately create what we called a matrix of tangibles. And what we mean by tangibles are units, physical units we could quantify, whether that was a new home that participated in an Advanced Energy program or a program they influenced, an existing home, commercial facilities in the C&I assessments, motors, any kind of a unit that we could quantify. And then we looked at what the annual energy usage was for that customer or that particular application, and then what % energy savings were derived by Advanced Energy's actions. We then looked at the influence and attribution of those actions. And this is what I'll call the squishy part of any research project like this, but a necessary step to say, how do we apportion the total savings that we saw from these kind of interventions? Finally, we took all of this into a formula that there's a lot more detail in the report on, that ultimately produced the impacts and metrics that I mentioned earlier: energy savings, carbon reductions, and bill savings for North Carolina customers. Next slide. I want to thank all of the subject matter experts that donated their time to this project. These are the 5 different sectors that we looked at that advanced energy influenced. They've done more than this, but these were the 5 that we focused on: renewable energy, transportation, and particularly electrification of transportation, C&I, commercial energy assessments in particular, motors and drives, and all the work that advanced energy's done around improving efficiency of motors and drives, and then finally residential home building and residential existing homes. And so we used, as I said, a multi-pronged approach with this. What we call is like a modified Delphi panel approach. I've used this approach before. It's a really effective way to get a consensus from stakeholders and subject matter experts where there is some uncertainty as to exact attribution and influence. And so we did a pre-session survey with this group, and then each one of these 5 groups, we held focus groups, where we brought all these subject matter experts together in a focus group and talked about all the actions, the influence, the attribution, the savings that we had calculated. Finally, we worked independently with each one of these subject matter experts after that session to verify and vet our results, run all our final results past them, and do some individual surveys and individual interviews to make sure that we had consensus on all our final results. So it was a great process, and again, thanks to all the subject matter experts who helped us through that. Next slide. And I know I'm going pretty quickly, but I wanted to give you guys a lot of information in a short period of time. And in this, I really wanted to focus on the next section, which is the results. And I think the results have been pretty astounding in terms of what we were able to identify in terms of impact. So next slide. I think there are 6 slides in this section, and each one of them is laid out the same way. So we created this template to provide a little bit of consistency across all these subject areas. You'll see in the top left, we start with a bold idea that was the genesis for this market intervention. And then notice in the approach, those are all those same steps along the impact curve. And so we're documenting all the ways that advanced energy worked along that impact curve to create impact. Next, the history on the right-hand side and some key milestones. We wanted to make sure that we gave a quick overview of that. But most importantly, really, it's about the impact and the influence in the center of each one of these slides. And so going to the motors and drives, you know, the big, bold idea was that small incremental improvements in motors can have an immense cumulative impact when you look at all the applications of motors and the amount of energy worldwide that runs through motors. And so, and then the other side of that big vision was that if consumers didn't know the difference between an efficient motor and an inefficient motor, it was impossible to spec that. And so by working with the industry and creating labeling and other ways that consumers could identify efficient motors, it's really helped to transform the market. And so Advanced Energy pioneered a lot of firsts in motor testing and in really designing some of the original tests for what are still used today in their nationally accredited motors lab. Over the last 30 plus years, almost 40 years, Advanced Energy has tested more than 4,000 different brands and models of motors. And when you think about how many times those individual brands are replicated across the world, you're talking about influencing millions of motors over the years. The collective impact has been pretty astounding. 214,000 gigawatt hours of energy saved through a combination of motor efficiency performance standards for new motors, as well as efficient repair practices that Advanced Energy leaned in with the industry to make sure that they were improving and bringing the industry along. And ultimately what that's led to is 86 million metric tons of carbon saved. In this particular area, this is really an international influence. While some of this accrued directly to North Carolina, this has been one of the areas that Advanced Energy has become internationally recognized in. And so these are really global numbers in this case. Next one, I want to talk a little bit about residential housing. And again, we've got 5 different sectors that we're going to go through. So this is our second sector. And again, the bold idea in this sector was that we could improve not only efficiency and performance, but also safety, durability, and affordability in single and multifamily housing, and do it in a way that brought building science and physics and science to the table in a very research-focused way. And so you see all those different areas of the impact curve where advanced energy was very foundational in changing specs and standards for state programs like System Vision in North Carolina and closed crawl spaces, and national programs like Energy Star that have influenced an amazing amount of homes. So advanced energy began this work in the late 80s. They have a huge sustained national influence. When you see over 1 million homes that we identified that have been influenced by advanced energy's work and have that's led to them achieving higher performance standards, over 1 million homes nationally, with maybe as many as 10% of those homes in the North Carolina area. We see that as producing over 35,000 gigawatt hours of cumulative energy savings over the years. And then the final metric I wanted to point out is one that's particular to North Carolina only, and that is from the System Vision program and the closed crawl space programs that are particularly focused on affordable housing in North Carolina. And through those programs, advanced energy has helped save North Carolina residents over $48 million in energy costs for consumers who can least afford their energy bills. And so great local impact as well as national and international impact for this particular sector. Next slide. And now moving to commercial and industrial customers. Again, advanced energy works across all of these different sectors. And as you heard Mike and others within both the Motors group as well as the commercial and industrial assessment group, the vision here was to help businesses become more competitive in the state of North Carolina by helping them to produce more product per unit of energy input. And so this, again, goes back to the mid-'80s. And advanced energy has had a long, sustained, and evolving set of projects here. And what we find is that this has evolved over time, starting with a lot of technologies, moving into things like strategic energy management and operation of buildings, and now even moving into things like sustainability practices and broader ISO 50001 certification. And advanced energy is taking kind of a two-pronged approach. It starts with a lot of training and awareness building among customers, among the C&I customer base. They've conducted trainings over the last 35 years that have attracted about 1,800 people a year. If we think about that, they've trained over 35,000 people during that period of time. They've conducted over 1,600 energy assessments for C&I customers. About 90% of those energy assessments were done in the state of North Carolina. And those assessments have produced direct savings of $67 million in energy costs for participating commercial and industrial customers. So that's another great example. And let's turn to the next one. I've just got a couple more, and I'm going to touch on transportation. I know Vicky's going to talk some more about plug-in NC later today. But this bold idea was really started with the idea that collaboration among some key stakeholders and influencers could really speed the adoption of smart adoption of electric vehicles in the state. And again, this is a multi-pronged effort that starts with a lot of education and awareness building and outreach, as well as partnerships that help deliver the EV infrastructure across the state of North Carolina. So plug-in NC really got its genesis in the late 80s. The group itself has been around for over a decade. It has 104 members currently participating. Those members have helped develop 332 charging stations, so helping EV infrastructure across the state. And then they've trained over 1,000 people each year that attend over 20 different workshops around EV training, webinars, presentations, and EV events annually in the state of North Carolina. So a lot going on there, and I think this is one that we'll see an explosion in the next few years. Next one, this is actually the last sector, but we split it into two different kind of sub areas. And so this is renewable energy. And in the first slide here, we're going to focus on PV interconnection. And the bold idea here was to ensure that large scale PV interconnections are done in a manner that's safe, that's reliable, that thinks about things like power quality, and that is commissioned ultimately by a third party. Again, Advanced Energy uses a similar approach here, where they do a combination of training for the industry as well as direct services providing those third-party commissionings. And so typically annually, they're training about 100 different industry personnel in appropriate PV interconnection. And as things like battery storage become more part of these, this is always something that's evolving over time. Over the time that this program has been in place, Advanced Energy has commissioned 213 PV commissioning and interconnection projects that have produced about 872 megawatts of utility scale solar. So another huge impact. And then my final slide in terms of impacts, I'd like to also focus on renewables, but a little bit about NC Green Power. And I think of NC Green Power in some ways as being a parallel to Plug-in NC, with the bold idea that let's start to collaborate across different parties, and really led the creation of a first of its kind in the nation to think about ways that customers who are interested in renewable energy could voluntarily contribute through their utility bills towards a fund to accelerate the adoption of renewables in the state of North Carolina. And again, as all of these efforts you see, it has a combination of intervention and market influence and education. And so to date, over 43,000 students have received energy and STEM education through 57 different solar schools projects that have been implemented by NC Green Power. It's been over 1,000 gigawatt hours generated from NC Green Power renewable and solar schools projects, and those have resulted in over 100,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions avoided. Next slide. I'm going to kind of wrap it up here by just giving a bit of an overview of not all of these impacts come down to gigawatt hours, but if we just look at the gigawatt hours that we've identified that Advanced Energy has influenced over the last 40 years, I like to turn these into some kind of an equivalency, because people think about, and collectively, this looks like 250,000 gigawatt hours of energy savings. And so to put that in some kind of perspective, we looked at the average or typical usage of a North Carolina home, and the total savings that Advanced Energy has been able to bring to the nation and the state of North Carolina in the last 40 years is equivalent to the amount of energy that would power 1 million North Carolina homes for 20 years. And so very significant. I want to just give a lot of credit to Advanced Energy for all their work over the last 40 years. I just have one more slide. So if you want to go to the last slide, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone's time and attention today. Thank you to all our subject matter experts. Thanks to the Advanced Energy Board of Directors and the whole team at Advanced Energy that really leaned in with us on this project. And I just wanted to point out that on this last slide, this is a collage of just some of the many different photos we saw in the Advanced Energy archives over the years. So direct action helping North Carolina consumers over the last 40 years. So with that, I will close, and I'm here and available for any questions. And I just want to say thanks, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. I wanted to thank the Commission for allowing me this time to present to you. We've got a lot of great updates
to share with you about the great work that we've done this year. Next slide. I'm going to be covering some of our recent activity, starting with our long-standing products of renewable energy and our carbon offsets, and also give you an update on our Solar Plus Schools program, and let you know about the work that our Strategic Planning Committee has been doing all year long as well. As you probably know, individuals and companies can support our program in two different ways. Folks can make donations just to support the good work that we're doing around renewables and carbon offsets in our schools, or they can actually make purchases of renewable energy certificates and carbon offsets through our program to meet whatever sustainability goals that they may have. Next slide. So in the 18 years that I've worked on the NC Green Power program, I've never seen the level of interest in renewable energy certificates and carbon offsets as I've seen in the past 18 months alone. It's been incredible, the amount of feedback we've been getting and the interest that we've been getting as well. They could be small companies, large corporations, local governments. We've been getting numerous calls and emails and inquiries from all these folks who are either developing or already have sustainability goals in place and are trying to figure out how do they get to that endpoint. The idea of supporting NC Green Power, a small nonprofit that supports our local projects, is very appealing to them. So we're in a really good place to help serve in this market right now. And a lot of these folks, they're not just looking to check off that box and say, yes, we bought RECs, or yes, we bought carbon offsets. They actually want that purchase to have some sort of societal benefit. They want to be doing good in addition to meeting those goals. So we're really in a very unique position to help these folks. Next slide. So in line with societal benefits, our Solar Plus Schools is a perfect fit for providing those benefits back to some of the folks that are looking to participate in our program. So I'm going to give you a quick update on where we are with our Solar Schools program. So in our program year 2020, we selected 10 schools, expanded from 5 and went to 10 schools in this year. Here's a list of some of the information about each of the schools that were taken into our program. We do have a preference for those schools in those Tier 1 counties that are most economically distressed in North Carolina, but we do provide support to all tier levels, as you can see in these slides. And the next slide you see is showing you the locations of the 10 schools from the program year 2020. And we're really happy to be able to move into areas that we had not been previously. So in the northeastern part of the state and the far western part of the state as well. We're always trying to add to the geographic diversity of our program. And this helps when we get to those outer reaches where we haven't had much participation in the past. So here are some images of the schools that we were able to construct this year. So these are 2020 program year schools, but the construction actually happens after they have fundraised. So this happened earlier this year. This is the Fletcher Academy. It's a private school here in the Raleigh area that specializes in teaching students with learning disabilities. A small school, but we felt like their cause was very meaningful, and their enthusiasm for getting an installation like this to help their students was significant. So it came in very high on our list of schools. Here is Island Montessori, a school down in Wilmington that partners with a local K-8 charter school. And it's actually our first roof mount installation that we've had in our program. Slide. The Northeast Academy of Aerospace and Advanced Technologies, or NEAT, is the school out in the eastern part of the state that actually was relocated in an old mall building. And if you know what those mall buildings look like, very straight walls and very flat roofs, it wasn't ideal for our typical top of pole mount installation because of the parking lot and the roof. You wouldn't be able to see the installation at all. So we applied with the commission to be able to redesigned some of our arrays to be able to do an awning type design for this particular school, and it turned out great. So we're very pleased with this. The next two slides are schools in our cooperative, electric cooperative areas, and you can flip to the next one. We're really pleased with the support that we've gotten from the electric utilities for the schools in their communities. These last two were funded by the electric co-ops that serve those schools, and it's just been really great to see the engagement and the support from those utilities, for their family schools that are in their area. For our program year 2021, we expanded to include 15 schools this year, and this is just a quick list of the schools. We did have a late dropout for one of our schools withdrew at the later stages of fundraising because of the concerns about fundraising with the pandemic. So instead of replacing them late in the game, we decided just to proceed with the 14 schools that you see here. And here's where they all are for this program year. Again, we have really good geographic diversity across the state. And then the next slide will show you our overall impact for the past few years of doing the Solar Plus schools. And our goal, of course, is to be in every 100 counties. And just because we're in a county doesn't mean we won't go back and help other schools in that county. So for all of you who know people who are educators or have children across the state attending schools, please be aware that this program is up and running and is doing very well received. And our application period will begin January 2nd for program year 2022. Next slide. I wanted to give you just a little update on our strategic planning committee's work. Next slide. So periodically, our NC Green Power Board of Directors will convene the Strategic Planning Committee, or the SPC, to take a look at where we are, where we want to be, and help to create this vision for our program. Our particular goals that the SPC was given this year was to look for these longer term revenue positive type programs or products and services that we could add to make our program financially sustainable. A lot of things have changed since we launched our program in 2003. We had our renewable energy product that was very well accepted and supported. But of course, we've seen some decline in those donations over the years. Carbon offsets, again, was popular, and then it's kind of tapered off a little bit. But recently, we've just had a huge influx of interest around those two particular areas. And we're trying to incorporate, our past with our future and what we expect down the road, and figuring out what we can add to our program to keep us relevant within North Carolina. So our staff met with a lot of different groups over the past 8 or 9 months as the SPC was convening. We talked to different school groups, local governments, counties, munis, and we met with individual companies as well. And the findings that we learned from this were quite interesting. It was very common from all the discussions that we had that people who have these sustainability goals realize that they can't do it themselves. They need outside help to be able to have the resources to meet their goals. A lot of them would prefer to do on-site projects to reduce their carbon footprint, to install on-site generation, but they want to do something that's very visible where they are or within their communities. So the other things that we're hearing about is the interest in energy efficiency and incorporating electric vehicles within their organization, whether they're a muni or they're even a school district. To be able to bring that into their program would be something of interest to them. We also heard that a lot of these schools that we work with or talk to are interested in larger solar installations. And we've been talking to solar leasing companies to figure out how can we bring this together? How can we make this possible? The challenge is that the school districts find it very hard and daunting to figure out the borrowing of money and the financing of these larger systems. But we're kind of diving in to try to help figure it out for them because they don't have the resources to devote to figuring this out. So we're trying to help them out with that. As you know, everything we do, we always file with the North Carolina Utilities Commission for their review and their approval. And while that's always worked for us in the past, when we had fewer opportunities presented to us, the market has changed so much lately that we have to have the ability to be more nimble and responsive to opportunities that come our way. So our strategic planning committee has asked us to consider creating a document for the commission to amend our program to allow us that flexibility to be able to respond to these responses that need to be submitted quickly, whether it's from the government or from a company that just wants to do something different than what we currently offer. And by asking for that flexibility, we're hoping that we can be more nimble, more agile in responding to folks who show up with a business opportunity where they really need our help, but may not fit perfectly within our current narrow scope of the program. So what we will be doing is we would like to file with the commission probably in the early part of this upcoming year to request the ability to broaden our program slightly to allow for that flexibility. Some of the things that we'd like to be able to consider, which have been brought to us by various folks that we've spoken with, is the whole idea of, how can we provide larger solar systems at these schools that we're working with? We would love to be able to get involved somehow with providing solar for the affordable housing market. We've been having these side conversations with groups who are piloting it. Is there a role for us to play within that space? Education and technical assistance has always been what we're about, both on the advanced energy side and NC Green Power. So we would love to be able to continue to provide that and those benefits, not just to schools, but other organizations who need that assistance as well. And we recently got involved in doing carbon verification for an organization with the help of one of our former staff members who serves on the NC Green Power Board of Directors, working with corporations who either need to figure out what their carbon footprint is, or if they know what it is, to help them purchase those offsets to offset their footprint. Or the last phase of that is coming in and figuring out, all right, here's your footprint, here's what you purchase in offsets, do those numbers match? Doing that carbon verification service for some of these companies is what we would also like to consider. So we'll be preparing a document for the Utilities Commission for these amendments to consider allowing us that ability to broaden our scope a little bit, but still focus around renewable energy and efficiency that we've always felt has been important for North Carolinians. That I further slides. Sheets.
Vicki, this is Charlotte Mitchell. May I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Can you just making sure you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. I love hearing from you and about the things that you all are doing, particularly with the schools across the state. For these, most of these installations, these solar installations are relatively new. And I assume, wouldn't need much O&M at this point in time. But help me understand, is there a mechanism in place for you all to provide O&M to these schools or institutions as these installations age? Or is that something that you all, might consider doing in the future?
Sure. That's a great question, Charlotte. Right now, depending on the school's economic situation, schools raise a set amount of either $6,000, $9,000, or $12,000 towards the cost of construction. The overall project costs about $45,000, and we make up the difference. And sometimes we have the help of the State Employees Credit Union Foundation, who puts in their own grant funds as well. Part of that say $6,000, part of that $6,000 actually is money that is fundraised by the school that will be returned to them. $2,500 of that $6,000 is actually designated for future O&M costs or repairs. So when they raise their $6,000, we construct the solar array at their school and everything has been inspected and done. We will actually issue a refund to that school of $2,500 so that they can reserve it in a special account, a rainy day account, if you will, for future O&M after the warranty for the system expires. So we do have that, but we haven't thought beyond that. You know, what happens if they spend out the $2,500 in relatively short order? You know, what would we need to do then? Given the fact that these solar arrays don't really need a whole lot of O&M and they don't really break, we don't expect that there will be major costs associated with keeping the system up and running for 20 years. But we could be wrong, and we would be willing to consider other options if we hear from the schools that they need some assistance.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. You answered my question. I appreciate
Sure.
it. And thank you, Vicky, for sharing with us. I really enjoy your presentations.
Thank you.
Vicky, I have a question if no one else has a question.
Sure thing. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, I was curious. I was just struck with the earlier presentations about how much research and monitoring you do. And I know early on there wasn't that many of these systems around the state, but now looking at a map, there's quite a few, and the number's growing rapidly. Do you have access to the performance of these systems? It would seem to be a really nice data set for, you know, small, almost, you know, it's rooftop essentially as far as size goes. And I'd just be really curious if you can track on an hourly, daily, monthly basis what's happening in on these systems.
Yes, absolutely. Part of the package that we provide to the schools includes real-time data monitoring. So not only do we have access to that data, but it's publicly available. If you go to our website, you will see each of the 57 schools listed. And for those that have been constructed and are operational, you can see their daily information provided on our website.
Okay, great. And I guess following up on the chair's question, is somebody on your team actually looking at that? So if something went down for, you know, a month, and I'm speaking from a parent of a Jordan High high school student, and I know Jordan's been one of your more complicated installations, and I just wonder if it stopped working. I'm not sure anybody at Jordan High School would notice.
We're fortunate in that we are alerted anytime there is a fault on the system. So we are notified. We give it a little time to come back online or for the school to realize that it's offline because they get those alerts too. But we do follow up with each school if we notice that the system is down for more than a short period of time.
Great, thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, thanks, Vicky, and thanks, Tom, for those interesting presentations and I think great questions. I'm Michael Lyda with the Advanced Energy Motors Lab. I'm the technical director for the lab, as well as the technical supervisor for our large business and industry team. And I'm going to take a few minutes today to give an update on the work of our Motors and Drives group over the past year, 2021. I appreciate the commission allowing me to be here to make the presentation, as well as the Advanced Energy Board and the leaders of Advanced Energy for asking me to be involved. So I would like to start with our team. You know, every great group starts with the staff. We did bring on some new staff. We're a growing team in 2021. We brought in Charlie Phillips on the screen, second from the right, as our laboratory quality manager. He was a fresh grad out of North Carolina State. Go Pack. We also brought on Ben Mosley right in the middle of the screen, also a fresh grad out of NC State back in June. Ben grew up in Monroe. Charlie grew up in Charlotte, both North Carolina natives, mechanical engineers from NC State. We're happy to have those. And actually, the picture here isn't even the most up to date. In the past few months, we brought on Ante Johnson as a project manager to the Motors and Drives team. He comes by way of the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association and grew up in Connecticut. So we're very happy to have all of the new team members, and everyone's contributing very quickly to our calls. So now I want to spend a few moments talking about some of the projects that we worked on. Our Motors and Drives group is very involved outside the state of North Carolina, as well as internationally, with lab certifications, testing, and evaluation. So what I wanted to do today is focus on some projects that have more of an impact within our state. And we continue down. Tom Hines mentioned earlier our impact curve, starting kind of at the investigative research phase and on up through ending with program design. Initially, I wanted to look at some projects on the investigative research side of things. We continue to work with our member utilities, Duke Energy, Dominion Energy, and the North Carolina co-ops. And I wanted to highlight a project that we did for a Dominion customer in Eastern North Carolina. They're a large pharmaceutical manufacturer, very vital manufacturer, very great manufacturer to have in North Carolina. They use clean rooms for their process when they're making their medical equipment and packaging equipment, stuff that goes in vaccines and medicine that folks may be taking. The clean rooms must be kept at positive pressure displacement. So it's very important that the clean room's kept at positive pressure. Otherwise, if the room was at negative pressure, you could have particulate matter come from outside the room and contaminate the product. And they were having some, equipment shutdowns and some equipment malfunctions that was causing negative pressure in the clean rooms. So Advanced Energy was brought in, along with Dominion brought us in as a third-party consultant. We investigated the problem, determined it was a power quality issue. There was some very short duration transient voltage events, instantaneous voltage sags on the incoming power. The utility, by definition, it wouldn't really have been a utility issue because the transient voltage events were so short. We're talking in the 1 to 10 millisecond range. To be like a momentary outage, you have to go a much longer event. So we were able to come in, make recommendations to the manufacturer along with input from their maintenance staff, adding uninterruptible power supplies, as well as helping them with ride-through programming for their variable frequency drives, which control the supply fans on their air handling units. And the air handling units would be what dictates, air moving into the clean room, which holds the pressure of the room. So it was a great opportunity for us to get involved with manufacturing plant in North Carolina. The reason the voltage sag issue it became an issue for this manufacturer is because they use digital electronics on their control for their air handling units. So voltage sag, not typically that big of an issue for things like motors or drives if they're not using digital electronics. So this is an issue that Advanced Energy sees moving forward as companies are using more and more digital electronics as control, especially with places like server farms in our state, which there are a lot of. So what we've done as a company is we went out a few months ago, we purchased a voltage sag generator. And that's something that we can offer to our members and their customers moving forward through our lab. We're adding that as a commercial testing service in 2022. The Sag Generator, there's some global supply chain issues. The Sag Generator will be arriving sometime around Q2 2022, and we will be marketing that as a new testing service. And I encourage everyone, one thing that our Motors and Drives group does is has a quarterly newsletter. If you're not on the quarterly newsletter, let me know, we can get you added. We will be marketing services like that through the newsletter. So the second project that I wanted to highlight, again, this was one that's focused on very important in North Carolina. This company, Choretime, came to us. They're a poultry and egg production systems manufacturer based in Milford, Indiana, and they build all kinds of equipment, feeders for broiler poultry, breeder poultry, turkey, eggs, the gauntlet of things. One of their products, the very popular products, is ventilation fans. And the reason they came to us, they were having some issue with the electric motors that they purchase from their suppliers for their ventilating fans, some quality issues. So they wanted to have the capability to test those motors, verify performance in-house. And so with Advanced Energy's expertise with the Motors and Drives Lab, which has been around for now many, many years, we consulted with them to design, specify equipment, supply them drawings for the dynamometer design or motor test bench design. And we're actually finished that project up just a few weeks ago with sending them the LabVIEW software program, which we wrote in-house for their dynamometer. So, if you do find yourself in a poultry farm anytime soon, look around. You may see in our state, you may very likely to see chore time equipment. They're very popular in our state and across the nation. The last item I wanted to mention was some of our training efforts. We gave a webinar back in December 2020 titled Tips and Tools for Effective Motor Management and a Primer for Variable Frequency Drives. We gave the webinar in partnership with a group, Content for Engineers Media, CFE Media, and they're the parent company of Plant Engineering and Control Engineering magazine. So this is a publication that's very well read and very well recognized in the field of industrial manufacturing. As a follow-up to the webinar, and the webinar was well attended, we had over, I think, 500-600 attendees, all virtual. As a follow-up to the webinar, we worked in conjunction with the Plant Engineering magazine to write a 3-page article about the Q&A from the webinar, and we actually were selected as the cover story for the January-February 2021 issue of Plant Engineering magazine. So it was a great accomplishment for our team. And if you are interested, Plant Engineering magazine is a free publication, so it's great free marketing for Advanced Energy as well. And the last thing I wanted to highlight, I know we talk about testing and evaluation. That's really what our lab is most known for. I checked the database, before we came for the presentation. We have passed over 200 motors through the lab in the year 2021, numerous additional tests, on top of the 200, and then also 50 variable frequency drives. So our lab continues to be, moving along with testing, evaluation, along with the other activities that I mentioned. Again, I wanted to thank everyone for the commission and the board of Advanced Energy for allowing me to present. We may have time for a question if anyone has one. Carl.
Mike, this is very great. I'm very proud of what you've done, and I'm very happy. And the Sag generator that you're buying, will that be something you will test lab only, or can you take it on site to customer premises?
Initially, it's going to be based in the lab. So we may look at being able to bring it mobile. I understand that it's kind of maybe a better option for manufacturers, so they don't have to shut the equipment line or production lines down just so we can test equipment. But at least initially, it's going to be based in the lab. All right. Thank you very much. And for those in the room, I had mentioned board member Fenley had mentioned she hadn't been to our lab. So following the lunch, anyone who wants to take a tour of the lab is welcome to meet up with me, and we'll go down and tour the lab. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom, Vicki, Michael. Good presentations. We're getting ready to close out our session with the commission this morning, and I'll ask Chair Mitchell if you or any other members of the commission have questions or comments.
Thanks, Joanne. Let me check in with the commissioners to see if they have questions for you all. I'm not hearing any. I'm not hearing any questions, but I'd like to say thank you so much for the presentation this morning. I enjoy so much hearing from you all, learning about the work that you're doing in our state, the innovative things you're doing, and again, I appreciate very much your sharing with us. And keeping us aware of what you all are doing. I enjoy it very much, and I'll speak for my colleagues and say that we very much appreciate your effort, your dedication to our state, and your willingness to share with us as you all do every year. Joanne, thanks for your time and organizing this for us. And I want to pile on to the comments that you made at the beginning of the session about Bob. Bob is just such a pleasure of a person to deal with and be around. And I really appreciate that and appreciate the good work that he is doing in leading the organization. And thankful that we have him. So, Joanne, with that, that's all from me. I want to again say thank you for the time and the effort that you all have gone to for us today. And thank you for last night as well. It was a wonderful time. So thank you.
It was. Thank you. And this is just a great way to end up this session and to end the year. These are exciting reports, and we know we're looking forward to even more this coming year. So with that, we want to thank the commission and the public staff. Without your support and your advice to us as we need it, this would be a very different operation here. So we appreciate it. Any questions from members of the board or comments? With that, we are adjourned. Happy holidays.
Very good.
Feel that.